Okay, today we're doing a little bit of a different type of video, and today we're problem solving. How do we know if we could play the altered scale or the octatonic scale over a dominant chord? In this case, we're doing a static dominant chord, we're doing C7. But the question really relates to, can we choose between one or these two for different flavors to do the same thing? So as you see, we have a lot of information on the page here. Now, let's see. Up here, this is the C7. This is the chord that we're playing over, right? Again, static dominant chord, right? No extensions or alterations. Generally, the altered scale would sort of be especially appropriate for a C7 alt, something where you have altered tones, like we see here. All the alterations are there, and then we actually have the main dominant notes, right? Now, the root, the third, and the 7 of a dominant 7th, right? Then over here, I have what the chord is missing, okay? Or what the scale is missing, so what's not in it, right? But let's first start with some of the similarities here, right? So if we start with the altered scale, we see the altered scale has a few different names, and for good reason. One is dominant diminished because it's got a dominant 7, root third, 7th, but then it's also got the beginnings of a diminished octatonic scale, like these here, where we have an alternation of half, whole, or even whole, half. But in this case, it's half whole, right? It's also known as the whole tone diminished scale because, as you see, whole, we have whole tone scales, and then it turns into diminished. So, like the back end of the scale is the whole tone, and the front end is the diminished. Okay. Now, what I've done here is in rectangular boxes are the chord tones to the C7 chord. So you could see that the altered scale features just the essentials, the root, the third, in this case F flat, E. I chose F flat because I'm actually spelling it from D melodic minor, which is the way I like to think about it. So F flat is the note that I'd be thinking about in that scale. And then we have this note here. So this note is where the pattern breaks. And this is the alteration of the sharp 5 or the flat 6 from the root of our scale. And you can see it goes from a whole step, which follows this pattern, and then boom, another whole step. And that's why. And so what's missing, since we have that whole step, what we end up excluding from the scale becomes this G9 chord. These are all the notes that are missing from the scale. G, B, D, F, A. That's G9 in complete form. And so it's interesting that I thought that there is a 1 and 5 relationship, a tonic dominant relationship, something that's so essential to tonal music. In, let's say, if I'm doing C7, just C is the root, and then a perfect fifth away is G9. This is only a 7-note scale, so there's going to be 5 notes missing. It's just interesting that the notes missing are a complete dominant 9 chord off of the 5 of that root, which means that anything from here will get us to lose the sound of the scale itself. So we'll lose some of this whole tone quality or some of this diminished quality by adding any of these notes in there. Okay. Now, if we looked at these octatonic scales, and this is I reviewed my set class theory book from graduate school for this because it's been a while since I wrote it down. But octatonic, labeled in the 3 different ways. You can see I even messed up here, but the octatonic labeled in 3 different ways, which is the set class that uses 0 and 1, which is like C and C sharp, or D flat, as I chose to spell it here. And then we have the set class that uses 1 and 2, or the octatonic scale that uses those pitch class 1 and 2, that's C sharp and D, and the octatonic scale that uses 2 and 3, that's D and E flat, there. So it doesn't matter whether we go whole or half, because you could start, since these are completely symmetrical scales, you could start them in any place. But I chose to use this second scale starting from C because it had the C in it. So what we can just see visually very clearly is that octatonic 0-1 actually features the complete dominant 7th chord in it. So can you use an octatonic scale over a dominant chord? Absolutely. Can you use the altered chord or the altered scale over the dominant 7th chord? Absolutely. Octatonic 0-1 will give you the sound that has all of the chord tones. It is the most complete. So you can think about that if you're playing over any dominant 7th chord. It's the dominant 7th chord that has, it's the octatonic scale that has the root of that dominant 7th chord, and then is the half step. So it's the half step octatonic, the half step diminished scale from the root. And that will give you the most complete form with all the chord tones. This will give you the most consonant sound over your choice of dominant 7th chord, right? Even if you have an alteration like a sharp 2, there's our sharp 2 right there. You see how the alterations are really lining up often on this one. These are the same notes here. The G flat is in there, so we have that sharp 4, the flat 5. This scale features the G, and that's what really makes it very separate. And you can see at this point we're losing that whole tone sound because we're continuing the pattern of the half and the whole and the half. Okay. Now, this one also includes the root octatonic 2-3, but that's the only pitch that it includes. You can see of the notes omitted here. That's after this little vertical line. The notes omitted, these are the other 3 notes that form the C7 tetrad. So if you go from the root whole step route from the, if you go the whole half route from the root of your chord, you're actually going to get a very outside sound because only one of these 8 notes will actually be in the harmony. And then the other flavor, right? This one's only 1, so the complement of that is 3, right? If you go from, in this case, the root isn't even in it. So if you build it from the 3rd, if you go from the 3rd and do the half step version there, then you'll have 3 of the chord tones. You can see this is the C fully diminished 7th chord, and you see the C is the omitted note, but then the rest of these are not included in there. In the actual chord. So in sort of quick thinking improvisation, if you like the sound of the altered scale and you like the sound of the octatonic scale and you like to use them over dominant chords, if you focus on just practicing half step from the root, so just your half diminished scale, your half whole diminished scale, and you learn your roots really well, and you practice the octatonic scale, which also starts with the half, then you'll have the sound that features the vast majority of the chord tones. These will be your best shot at providing an inside sound. And, then you basically get to choose your flavor here. Do you want more of that whole tone sound, which gives you the altered scale sound, or do you want to keep the symmetrical quality of the diminished octatonic scale? So that's pretty heavy. It's a lot of theory. This is a pretty advanced one. So if you have any questions or anything, you want me to elaborate on anything further, please feel free to let me know in the comments or send me a message. I'll be happy to expand further in whatever ways we're interested in, right? If you want your help understanding this kind of stuff in a structured way and you want to be able to do it from the ground up and test as you go, then please feel free to send me a message. I'd love to help you out. Thank you very much. Have a great night.